Right, let's get to Chelsea then. Mauricio Pochettino agreed to become the new head coach of Chelsea with an announcement expected in the next few days. Your piece, I love it, because it's entitled, Pochettino agrees terms and plots summer transfers. I was like, oh my, no, not more, surely coming in the door. But, I mean, this is going to be an amazing appointment for Chelsea, you'd think. Yeah,
I think so. I mean, it's been a long process, one that's been criticised at times, and especially given the the context of Chelsea's season since the takeover. But however they've got here, I think whether it's by design or they stumbled onto it, I think they've got pretty much the perfect manager for where they are now as a club, especially when you consider the makeup of the squad, which is, I mean, Chelsea's whole ambition is to create the best young squad in Europe, which is reflecting some of their signings, despite some criticism of some. But, I mean, in the last decade of English football, or even if you want to go back longer, one of the managers with the best records with bringing through young players is Pochettino. There's a period where he was responsible for half the England first 11. Now, some people point to the lack of success. I would argue, in terms of relative performance, getting Spurs to 86 points in 2018, getting to a Champions League final, was drastic overperformance. And I think, even if it's not immediate, I think it's a good match for Chelsea and someone who can, I suppose, impose order on what has been a chaotic season.
Yeah, we'll come to what you might have to do in terms of the transfers, because I'm interested to see. Surely you don't mean more coming in the door, maybe you mean...
At least 3 more, I'd say.
Wow, really? No. Look, what will be the main challenge, do you think, for him, though, as he comes in the door?
I think the biggest challenge for Pochettino is not within the squad. I think it's keeping the ownership away from the first team and ensuring that the football people, i.e. himself and his team, are able to focus on the football, and the ownership are able to focus on the things away from the pitch. There are situations regarding some players at Chelsea that don't relate to football, and that's harming the team. You see a striker who's playing, the only inference you can draw from the fact that he hadn't been given a run of games under Lampard, Pierre-Emerick Aubameyang, is that it's political rather than football related, because they're not scoring goals, they're creating lots of chances, but they're not able to take them. Their record of scoring goals in the Premier League suggests that, and the Champions League, where they went out with a whimper. I think as far as Mason Mount is concerned, he's one of their best players. We know that Pochettino would like to keep Mason Mount. They've got to resolve that contract situation. And I just think the people at Chelsea who run Chelsea, they do have good intentions. I've said more than once on the show, there is a really good team struggling to come out at Chelsea. What we've also seen is that sometimes when new ownerships take over clubs in the Premier League, the first year is invariably a circus, because they're trying to get to grips. They think they can apply what they've learned elsewhere in business to football, but football is a very different beast. But after that initial period, it does settle down. The football does do the talking. You get the right people in, you do suddenly start to realise the potential of what you have. And I think the ownership at Chelsea, they have taken a bit of stick, but I actually think they'll start to get a lot of credit as time goes on, because this is an outstanding signing. Not good, not great, I think it's an outstanding signing. I covered Pochettino's Tottenham. I saw the way he worked alongside Jesus Perez, his trusted lieutenant, if you like. They like to work with young players. They like to establish a culture of respect, hard work, and buying into the values of the football club. They are a partnership that gets the best out of players that want to work for them, and that's what we'll see. But all of that is predicated on if he and Jesus are allowed to do the job. If they do that, they could be a superpower in the Premier League again.
It's interesting, you talk about being a superpower, and I do want to ask about what you think he's capable of doing. But in terms of the players then, there's going to be a bit of a shuffle in terms of the financial fair play rules, because they're 11th at the moment. They're not going to make Champions League football. They're going to have to reduce their outgoings, aren't they, in order to have that shuffle? Yeah,
and even before you get to financial fair play, really, I mean, there's a fundamental issue with the size of the squad, and that it's a problem that managers face this season, well, whichever manager you want to pick, where no matter what's, not just first 11, no matter what match day squad they picked, they had up to 5 to 10 players unhappy because they were left out. And that immediately just, it's a problem for the chemistry of the group. So one of the things that came up in discussions with prospective managers was, how you're going to hone the squad, what you're going to do. So Pochettino basically has to decide to get rid of about 10 players. But, I mean, we already know some of those that he's really keen on, including Mason Mount, as I mentioned, Reece James, Kovacic he quite likes, Kante obviously, and probably feels he can get more out of him. Enzo Fernandez, his compatriot Argentina. So I think the squad will be drastically reduced, but from what I'm told, to further hone what Pochettino won for the first 11, they're looking at another goalkeeper, which I suppose might seem surprising to people given they've spent 100 million in the last few years in goalkeepers. But I suppose it's all about what you need right now. A centre forward, which is also where Lukaku's future is interesting, and a number 6 to kind of pin the team together. So that's three positions they're looking at.
Just to add to that, I don't think that's necessarily going to be a problem for Pochettino. I don't know if you agree with this, Bingo, but when he was at Spurs, he pared down that side.
Yeah.
Some of the underachievers that were there, Adebayor, Soldado, one or two others, he got them out. He doesn't like old players, players who maybe feel that the club owes them a favour. So anyone who's not willing to buy into what he wants to do, they'll be gone. He doesn't like anybody who rocks the boat. He doesn't like players that are going to affect the harmony of the squad, the dressing room. And so all those players who he might have an issue with, they will be gone. And actually, this is an opportunity rather than a problem for him.
It shows his authority, doesn't it? Because I'm sure
Absolutely.
any manager of any worth sort of doesn't really like anyone that rocks the boat. And,
Absolutely. But managers aren't always able to get that kind of player out of the club, but he will be. And I think the reason for the lengthy delays is he will have wanted those guarantees. You know, he will have wanted the guarantee that he's got the authority to be able to do what he wants with that squad. But the other thing you just mentioned about the players that he wants to keep, I think that a feature of this Chelsea will be a really strong defensive base. If you think about Southampton when he was there, they were one of the toughest teams to play against in the Premier League in that place. Their home record was outstanding. Think about Spurs. Best defensive record in the Premier League in the first year, joint best in the first year, the best defensive record in the second year. If you think about that defence with Wanyama and Moussa Dembele in front of it as well, they were so strong. I think they will be, you look at Spurs, at Chelsea and the quality they've got in that defence as well. He will make them very strong.
But just on that as well, that Darren touched on, one of the maybe biggest investments that this Chelsea hierarchy maybe have to make is basically to let players go, maybe expensive players go, or take in deals that seem a lacking of value at that moment. Because I remember hearing one of the biggest decisions that was made in Arteta's early time at Arsenal was being willing to take a hit on players that have been expensively signed or in massive wages. Obviously, the two most obvious are Mesut Ozil and Aubameyang. And even if that seems a huge financial cost at the time, what it does is, I mean, it's better for the longer term because it helps hone the team down to exactly what the manager wants. And there was an element that actually in what went wrong with Pochettino at Spurs, and that, I mean, we pretty much know that from 2017, actually, he wanted to create a new nucleus. But because of the way Spurs are run, because of the value they saw in certain transfers, they didn't do that. They didn't make it, and it left the squad quite stale. And now Chelsea probably have to make a similar decision in that if you're entrusting a manager with so much power, you've got to listen to him and players he wants in and out, and it might take some uncomfortable financial decisions.
Yeah, can I just say, in terms of Bowley, though, because of what we've witnessed, you know, he does like to tinker in a few things that perhaps he shouldn't. How long will he be given, do you think? Is this the project? Is this now the project that Bowley is going to preside over and say, actually, he's going to be given a couple of years? Or will it be, if next year they don't make Champions League, will we see a change again?
I think he'll get time because I know they've been derided a lot, but they're smart. The intention with Graham Potter was to give him time, but the results suggested that they couldn't go with it much longer. But I do think they are a smart group of guys with a good plan, if you like, in terms of the right man gets the time to do the job. And I think very quickly Pochettino will establish that he is the right man. And I don't think we'll get any of the negativity, he will establish very quickly on authority. He doesn't have the egos, I think, that he had at PSG. So he won't have that problem. He does have a specific way of working that everybody knows about. He does want that graft. He does want that culture within the club that sees everybody buy into it. He does have those team-building exercises that he used at Southampton, that he used at Spurs to establish that kind of commitment. And I think Miguel is right. He will have to get rid of some players that have been there for a long time, and maybe it could be time for them to have a fresh challenge. He will want a young, dynamic squad that he can freshen up. But I think we'll be talking next season about a very different Chelsea, because I don't think Pochettino gets the credit he deserves. And lots of people think he's tainted by the PSG thing. Actually, it's their loss. If you think about the managers PSG have lost and what they've gone on to do, Emery, Tuchel, and some of the others, they've all gone on to win silverware. And actually, it's PSG who have not been able to realise their ambitions.
It's an unmanageable club because ultimately the stars have so much power. Whereas this would actually be, in terms of the profile of the Chelsea squad, it'd be the complete opposite. Because, they're trying to bring through young players, and as you've stated, because of that hard-running, hard-pressing style that Pochettino wants, he prefers young players because I suppose they're more malleable. So it's a completely different situation.